Hi, we're often interested in what happens between two events. In the data here, we've got a list of projects. Each project has a start date and an end date. They generate revenue between those two dates, and maybe what we'd like is a profile of the revenue accrued across all projects every day in the 3 years that these projects last over. Let's have a look how we can do that by first looking at our data model. Here is our data model, our project table, our fact table, and a standard calendar table. In previous videos, we've come along and we've created a physical relationship between the calendar table and the project table, and that's good when we want to find out what happens on a particular date, but we're trying to find out what happens between date here, so we're not going to use a physical relationship. Instead, we're going to implement a virtual relationship in DAX. Let's do that. Let's start with the results that we want to see first and then work back to the measures to implement them. Here we've got a chart spanning the 3 years that all the projects start and end in, and it's got two axes. On the blue line, the left axis, is the number of active projects. That's the number of projects that have started but not yet completed on each date. The green line is the daily revenue at each date of those projects, and that's the green line, the right axis. Let's look at how we've implemented those now. As a reminder, we haven't actually created any relationship between the calendar and the project table. We've implemented this as a virtual relationship in the measures. So we have a couple of measures, and these are the number of active projects here, and we've also got the daily revenue of the active projects. Let's have a look at how they're implemented, starting with the number of active projects. This is the implementation of this measure. It's going to be calculated over 1,000 times to create this line chart, once for every date in the 3 years on the x-axis. For each date, it's going to come along and it's going to get a variable called current date, which is equal to the date. Since we're granular by date, the max date is the min date is current date. Let's take a date, for example, the 18th of October 2020. For that, it's going to come along and it's going to use the calculate, which tweaks the filter context. So it would bring back the number of projects. The number of projects is simply the count rows of the projects table. Let's have a look at that. There you go. So the number of projects is the number of rows is equal to the number of projects. But what it's going to do is, instead of bringing back up, it's going to filter it so that for every date, for this date 18th of October, we're saying that we only want to filter those projects where the start date is on or earlier than the 18th of October and the end date is later than the 18th of October. So it will bring back the number of projects that are active on the 18th of October and then for every other date in those 3 years. So what we will do is we will end up with this blue line here, which we can see rising up as projects get started. In the middle year, the number of projects starting and finishing is about the same, and then as project closes, as projects end, they go down to 0. I promised to explain that all selected here. That all selected removes any filters from the line chart, but allows other filters, for example this one on the filter pane, to take effect. So that's our number of active projects. Our daily revenue of active projects is almost exactly the same calculation. The only difference is that it has a different base measure, which is the daily revenue rather than the number of projects. And one final remark, we've got our chart here at the day granularity, but if I wanted to have it at monthly granularity, notice that we're going to get 36 points rather than over 1,000, one for every month. This is the point for December 2021, and that point there will be the number of active projects on the last date in December, last date of the month. And that's because if we have a look at the calculation, that calculation is giving us, we start off, we'd use this max function here, and that will give us the last date in the period, which would be the last date in the month in this case. So that's it. The Power BI example files are in the comments, in the link in the comments below. Next video we are going to do the same between dates calculation but in a totally different way using a DAX calculated table, and then we'll discuss the pros and cons of both approaches. I hope to see you then. Thank you.